This is Duke University.
Global trade and environmental justice.
Human rights issues are still.
The term Ubuntu.
About the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Is making inferential discovery.
The importance of an archive.
The John Hope Franklin Center.
Yeah, as Janan confesses, we're both from Texas. She's half Libyan Texan. I'm all Texan, and I have like 6 pairs of cowboy boots to prove it. A little bit about me. I am originally from Texas. I grew up there, and about 5 years ago, before this entity called Al-Jezeera English even launched, I came into the building. It was there were 10 of us in this little tiny room, and the ceilings were gutted and everything else. There were wires hanging out, and all the walls were black because it was actually what was behind the walls. And so there were 10 of us in this little room at this startup project called Al-Jezeera English. And then a year later, we launched. I'll back up and tell you a little bit about myself. I don't have a journalism background. I have a master's degree in Middle East politics from the University of Exeter. You can probably hear me, I think. No, okay, sorry. Okay, so I have a master's degree from Middle East politics from the University of Exeter. I got into television sort of by sink or swim kind of methodology. I used to do communications work at a small nonprofit, and my boss at the time had a television program on Abu Dhabi Television, which is another Middle East-based network, and he sort of said, I don't trust anyone else, so learn how to produce a TV show. It was also very cheap, so it all worked out. And I started producing shows for him. Eventually, this thing called Al-Jezeera English came into my life, and friends of mine were like, you should interview, you should give it a whirl. And then I met Riz Khan, who is my boss, an amazing mentor, and the host of the show that I currently am a senior producer for. It's just simply called The Riz Khan Show, just his name. For those of you that don't know Riz, he's very well known in international media. If you can't go anywhere in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, or Africa without people stopping him, asking for an autograph. He gets followed around. If you're ever in a major metropolitan city and you tell anybody you watch Riz Khan, the cabbies will give you a big thumbs up. He's really a legend in international media, and it's a real honor to get to work with him every day. So 5 years ago, we started with this project, Al-Jezeera English, and I think there were a lot of conceptions about what the TV network might be. I want to share one with you, because I like to keep things light, even though we are in very serious times. But I want to share one concept of what the idea of Al-Jezeera English was. So bear with me. I had some major technical difficulties today, but okay, let's see if this works. Oh, hold on. I can't get the volume. What happened? Did it just shut off, or?
Soccer finals between the Mashhad Scorpions and the Riz Sun Widows.
We're watching the English-speaking Al-Jezeera network. Death to America. It's the English-speaking action news with Abdul Karim Aziz.
Death to America.
We're watching the English-speaking Al-Jezeera network. Death to America.
It's
the English-speaking action news with Abdul Karim Aziz. Alibaba.
Death to America. This weekend, the weather's going to be hot. I'll give you tips on staying cool. Here's one of them. Death to America.
The
results of the second finals, the weather is going to be hot, and the Riz Sun give you tips on staying cool. Here's one of them.
With sports.
Come with me as I go behind the scenes of Middle East cricket with number 8 running Jim Gibbs. Exactly, Jim Gibbs.
And now, Abdul Karim Aziz.
Good evening, and Death to America.
We're watching the English-speaking Al-Jezeera network. Death to America. It's the English-speaking action news with Abdul Karim Aziz.
Death to America.
Jumana Fawzi.
My husband allows me to say only death to America.
The weather with Sunny Alibaba. This weekend, the weather's going to be hot, hot, hot. I'll give you tips on staying cool. Here's one of them. Death to America. Berhan Amir with sports.
I'll have the results of the soccer finals between the Mashhad Scorpions and the Riz Khan Weevils, plus death to President Bush.
Yazid Al-Farouk with entertainment news.
Come with me as I go behind the scenes on Lemony Snicket with the rubber-faced funny man Jim Carrey. And that's to Jim Carrey.
And now, Abdul Karim Aziz.
Good evening, and death to America. Our top story tonight: a Hamadan man lost control of his Passat and slammed into a herd of goats. We go now to Mumar Manir at the scene. Death to America.
Yes, thank you, Abdul. Death to America. I'm here with Ubay Shihab, who witnessed the accident. Miss Shihab, tell everyone what you saw and Death to America.
Yes, Death to America. I was standing over by the store with my friend and just saying to him, Death to America, when this car came flying out of nowhere and then slammed into the goats, and that's it. Death to America. Or is it possible to say Death to America to my mother and sister at home? Hello, Gabby. Hello, Jasmine. Death to America.
Yes, thank you, Umar. And Death to America. Jumama.
Please forgive. My husband allowed me only to say Death to America.
You know, that reminds me, I only allow my wife Mary Pat to say Death to America. And yesterday we were at this party, you see, right? And somebody asked her where the bathroom was, and she could only say Death to America.
Death to America.
That's enough now, guys. Enough. And now with sports, Berhan Amir. Berhan. Today was the opening day of the Death to America Cup. Though everyone was at the top of their game, it was the Death to America cheerleaders who stole the show with their decadent display of hot Western sexuality. Back to you, Abdul. Death to the cheerleaders. Yes, thank you very much. Death to America. And now hold on to your towels, because it's time for that crazy entertainment reporter, Yazid Al-Farouk.
All Americans are murderers, and one of them is a thief, and his name is Matt LeBlanc. Stole my heart. Here's Joe on must-see TV Thursdays. Death to America, except for Joey.
Oh boy, that Matt LeBlanc has impeccable timing. Impeccable. It's very good, yes.
Death to America.
And now with another Death to America editorial, our station manager, Marat Al-Fadl.
You ever wonder why we always say Death to America? I do. Do we really mean death to all the Americas? Death to South America? Death to America, the band from the 1970s? Perhaps I'm dating myself. When we say death to America, don't we really mean death to the United States? Or the U.S. for sure? Sure we do. So next time, let's say what we mean and say death to the United States. That's my opinion. What's yours? Email me at deathtoamerica.org.
The Death to America views in this editorial are not the views of this station. Oh, goodness, wait a minute. Yes, they are. From all of us here at the Al-Jazeera Action News team, good night and Death to America.
Okay, so in the early days,
Praise Allah.
I don't know what that is. Oh, it must have been something else on that page. Anyway, so in the early days,
Praise Allah. By the time you see this, I will have become a martyr for Allah and for Islam.
oh my gosh. Okay, I'm having technical difficulties today, obviously. But so when we first started up, we could take a big laugh at ourselves, and we had quite a bit of fun with that Mad TV skit in our own offices. But it wasn't before long that I think we showed the world that that's not what we were, that we were a very serious news channel with an international agenda, trying to reverse the flow of global news. For much of modern history, the news flow has been from north to south, with it dominated by Western news institutions. We saw this as a chance to reverse that flow of news from south to north and to get the stories that you don't hear all the time. There are things going on every day in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East that just never make it out into the mainstream media world. And that was sort of our goal, is to make sure we reverse that flow of news so that it wasn't just north to south, but also south to north, and sort of balance that out. And one of the things I realized, I think, when I got here is I live in the Washington bubble. And I know that everybody at the Pentagon and the State Department watches Al-Jazeera English all the time, and they use it for a source of news and information about what's happening around the world. But I think one of the things I'd forgotten is that not everybody still knows us, so I just want to clear the record. We are not terrorism TV. We are not the mouthpiece of Osama bin Laden. I know Donald Rumsfeld, when he used to be at the Pentagon, used to say that we like to air beheadings. We've never in our history on any of our channels aired a beheading. In fact, the Guardian newspaper in London actually printed that and had to print a retraction once, which is quite rare for them, but they did. And actually my boss Riz had it laminated, and he carries it in his wallet and shows it to everybody because he's quite proud of it, being a British journalist himself. But so we aren't those things, and I think when it comes to Osama bin Laden, we have aired those clips from him before, but so have all the other networks in the world. And what we do is, I mean, those things that he puts together are quite long and drawn out and boring. We take the newsworthy bits, like any other major news network, and we air them. And we weren't the first to do so either. So, you know, I just want to put those few things out there. And then, if I can get this to work, I had this whole thing put in this other program that I'll show you later that crashed literally 20 minutes before we got here. So, like any good media professional, I wasn't prepared enough. But I want to show you this bit. This I think encapsulates what we really are and what we're doing today. It was originally put together for a Canadian audience when we were trying to get coverage in Canada, but it gives you a good idea of what we're about. Okay, so while my husband tries to help me figure out his computer, which is the third I had to go to this week after 2 others went completely on me. So let me tell you a little bit more about our network. We have 65 to 70 bureaus throughout the world. We have 3,000 staff. That's across the entire Al-Jazeera family. About over 1,000 of those work just for Al-Jazeera English. In Washington, D.C., we have about 150 employees. Those are going to start going out across North America so that we can expand our coverage and get more of the Americas in. Right now we have about 150. Let me just hit it for me. I'm having such bad luck. I must be cursed.
As of 2009, Al-Jazeera was the only international English language broadcaster reporting from both sides of the conflict. The hallmark of Al-Jazeera journalism, every angle, every side. Afghanistan, 2001, the same uncompromising and fearless reporting. In the wake of 9/11, American forces attacked the Taliban in Afghanistan. They denied civilians were also being killed. Al-Jazeera, as the only news organization in Afghanistan, reported otherwise.
We know that Al-Jazeera has a pattern.
Shortly afterwards, the U.S. military bombed Al-Jazeera's bureau in Kabul. Award-winning correspondent Raghi Omar was there for the BBC on that day. Raghi is now a presenter and correspondent for Al-Jazeera English.
Al-Jazeera started out in 1996 as the first ever TV channel to provide comprehensive, independent television news and debate for the Arab world. Since then, the Al-Jazeera satellite channel has scooped, broken and reported stories worldwide, reaching over 50 million viewers and becoming one of brandchannel.com's most impactful television news brands globally. By 2006, the original Arabic channel expanded to become the international media network that it is today, and now reaching over 130 million households in over 100 countries around the world. Al-Jazeera English. Live 24/7 and via their Doha hub, Al-Jazeera English broadcast centers go to air as their audiences tune in. From Kuala Lumpur, Doha, London and Washington DC, international headlines and the latest news with correspondents from every continent and for every continent.
Behind us, the gunfire that you're
Russians said they weren't enduring. This is the proof they were.
The problem here is that there is not enough food for everyone.
With over 60 bureaux worldwide, the Al-Jazeera network mission is to show every angle and every side of every issue that's newsworthy. With people at the heart of the story, Al-Jazeera's fearless journalism gives a voice to the voiceless.
Police won't let us film, and as you can see, they're trying to take the camera off of us right now.
Live news on the hour, every hour.
Thank you, London. Thanks, Washington.
With in-depth analysis and comments as events unfold. I love the cut and thrust of Smart Debate. And Al-Jazeera's news is interactive through its comprehensive websites and new media initiatives, with live streaming and chat rooms on YouTube and Live Station, and scheduled for every time zone, up to the moment current affairs and documentary programs.
Hello and welcome to Thrust Over the World. And the bombs keep falling.
America has survived slavery, it has survived racism, and the proof of it is Obama.
Cutting-edge issues, hard-hitting reports, and entertaining features, building bridges between cultures.
Al-Jazeera TV is a perfect example of that. How do we open up the doors so that you can see what these cultures are and understand that the differences are not so much?
Al-Jazeera English is the first global TV news channel in the world to be based in the Southern Hemisphere. We break news from some of the world's most underreported regions. For example, Al-Jazeera is the only international news broadcaster to have a permanent bureau in Zimbabwe, allowing the world to see the awful conditions there.
Out here, if you aren't a known ZANU-PF supporter, you're a target.
We are frequently the first and often the only broadcaster to reach and report from some of the world's worst tragedies. We provide a different perspective, focused on people, their stories, and their relationship with power. Power is shifting in this 21st century world, and Al-Jazeera is in hot pursuit. Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas. We try to let this diverse and changing world tell its own stories, and we believe that that is what's needed and wanted now more than ever.
This was, until a few moments ago, an entirely peaceful protest. They're getting the bricks ready. It seems as they intend to fight.
It was definitely the worst anybody has seen in Gaza.
I was interviewing the leader, and then suddenly he declared that I was formally being taken hostage.
The fighting goes on, plumes of smoke rising there.
Okay, so that's really what we are and what we strive to be every day. And as I said, we have like over 1,000 employees, with 50 different nationalities just in the Al-Jazeera English family alone. That's not the whole network. So every day it's a great and wonderful experience where I go to work with a very international group of people from all parts of the world with different views and perspectives, and it's a real honor to be there with them. I had another clip I wanted to show you, but now I'm afraid of it. It was about the voice of the voiceless, and I wanted to give a couple different examples. I work on a daily talk show, which is much different than putting together a daily news bulletin. You know, I'm not under the same constraints of having to put a rundown together that shows every aspect of what's going on in the world. I get to pick each day a story and flesh it out in either a debate format or a dialogue format, depending on the issue. You know, we are trying to be the voice of the voiceless as much as we can. We try to be true to that. And I don't know if many of you remember the Zadroga bill for 9/11 first responders. I don't know if that rings a bell. The Zadroga bill. It was basically a bill to, every year they were having to go back to Congress and repass this bill to provide health care and to track the health effects of 9/11 on the first responders. And I don't know if you remember, but Jon Stewart launched a huge campaign and brought on the 9/11 guys and you know, trying to get this thing passed because it got held up because of the tax fight earlier this year. Well, long before Jon Stewart found this story, we actually did it on my show because we felt that the voiceless can even be in North America. You don't have to be in a place like Africa or Latin America to not have a voice in your society. The voiceless can be all around you. And it's finding those stories that we strive for every day and bringing them to air and bringing them to light in an intelligent way. And so what we did with the Zadroga story was we got 2 of those guys who were fighting for that legislation on our show, and we did this, like I said, months before Jon Stewart found it. And in fact, the funny clip I was going to share was actually Jon Stewart making fun of all the US networks for not giving it any coverage, and then in this one bit he was like, one network found time to give it the 23 minutes that it deserves. And then he shows up our show, and we were all like, oh my gosh, you know, somebody actually, you know, noticed what we were doing and appreciated it. And anyway, it was a really funny moment for all of us, because we were like, yeah, there's a droga bill. We know all about that, and we've been following it. But that's what we try to do on the Riz Khan show every day. I'll give another example with Cairo. I think it's you know, I think the U.S. networks were a little bit slow to catch on to what was happening in Tunisia with the revolution we saw there. Al-Jezeera was locked out, banned from being in Tunisia, but when we finally got in, our coverage was extensive. Before that, we were, like much of the world, relying on social media sources, but I think we were a bit quicker to get some of that to air. But when it came to Cairo, everybody was quicker on that one. We were luckily well established in the country, all throughout the country, able to report live throughout. Our reporters got beat up like other people's, they got arrested like other people's, but we still managed to get the story out, and I was very proud of that. But one of the interesting examples I thought with the way Cairo was covered prior to Mubarak stepping down is here you had, I think, some of the traditional shouting matches. You know, and one of the examples I looked at was Fox News. They had Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly in a debate about whether or not this was a Marxist, Islamist collaboration in order to bring about a worldwide caliphate, which I thought, okay, that's an interesting way to look at this. And then I looked at CNN, and CNN, Anderson Cooper, you know, to his credit, he was there, he was in the thick of it. But in a lot of ways, CNN's coverage sort of revolved around what personally happened to Anderson Cooper. And even on his own show, he spent a lot of time on that. And so then I wanted to show you this clip, but again, I'm afraid of it.
So Jenny, can I, follow up a little bit? And I should have said at the beginning, just like all Duke talk, feel free to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
So this makes me think, like, so in that example, how does Al-Jazeera's coverage, like going into the field, differ? And maybe you can't speak to what Fox, CNN, but like what's sort of the, you know, other than showing voice and voiceless, what is sort of the motivating factor when you go out and cover these stories?
Well, it is to get the untold story. It's to be there in person. I mean, I'm not a field correspondent, but that is like, when I put together my daily show, I'm not interested in talking about Afghanistan unless I can have an Afghani on. I'm not interested in talking about Africa unless I actually have somebody from Africa. We did the situation in Côte d'Ivoire. You know, we had somebody from both sides of that, and it was very interesting to me to hear the guy backing the president say, you know, look, the other guy to us just isn't legitimate, and to have him explain that. I saw that nowhere else. You know, and we actually had a representative of the sitting president against a member of the opposition who was saying, no, you lost, and hearing both sides of their story in a free and open forum. And that's what we try to do. And the point I was getting to with Cairo is we didn't want to just talk about violence and what was happening. We wanted to talk about what was going to happen next. And so what we did was we had on two, you know, really wonderful philosophers. And I know that may sound strange, but we like to give these people time to talk, and we like to get a different perspective. So we had on, some of you know, Slavoj Žižek, the Slovenian philosopher, and some people think is one of the most dangerous men in the world, but he's really wonderful to listen to and very inspiring. And we also had on Tariq Ramadan, one of the world's greatest Muslim scholars, who was considered by some to be an apostate, but by others to be a progressive, depending on where you fall on that scale. And we let them talk about the future of Egypt and what it was going to be like, and it was rather inspiring. And it wasn't a shouting fest, it was actually inspiring, and we thought brought the world together around that. So that was some of the ways in my show we differed. But like Janan said, what we try to do is we get out there on the ground. Our correspondents are from these regions. They're not, you know, they don't parachute me in, somebody who looks like me, to go cover these stories. We have people that are from these parts of the world who are reporting on them, who've grown up in them. And so they have the context to put to the stories. And also, we try to get to the people on the ground and get all the sides and get it out there and get it to air. And, you know, Libya right now is a perfect example of that. We're still not in the country. We've got people on all the borders. We will be in there soon, I promise you that. And we're getting stuff out via social media right now from there, like things that are slipping out of the country, and then we're also getting phone-ins from people. But we're sticking on that story, and we will stick on it. And I'm sure you have a ton of questions for me, and I do want to answer any questions you may have. But I just wanted to give you some of those comparisons about how we try to do things differently, and why sort of getting to the root of something is so important to us. I just feel like, you know, that way we all know, you know, it's important to know both sides of the story. If you don't have a complete context for a story, nothing's ever going to change. You know, if you don't ever understand where the other person is coming from, you know, we don't have much hope of ever seeing any change in this world. So, try to put it like that, but I'm happy to take questions.
You mentioned Egypt, and the thing that one of the things that struck me about your great coverage in Cairo was that you would be showing protesters or talking to someone who was there, and then you would have a split screen of what was running on state government TV right there. You talked about comparing yourself to CNN, Fox, and all that, but as you mentioned, your original vision was providing independent TV in a region where there's not a lot of independent TV. And tell me, how do you think you're changing media, particularly in the Middle East, but in other areas, even like some other ways?
Well, my Arabic sister channel has, you know, 14 years to our 4, and so, I mean, I assume that's what we're getting at, is the Arabic channel. The Arabic channel, which launched 14 years ago, has turned the Arab world upside down. I mean, it was all state-run TV. Nobody questioned anything on air, and if you've ever seen Arab state television, it's interesting. It starts out with, the king today did this, tomorrow the king does that, you know, the queen did this, and tomorrow the queen does that, and that's how it goes, and then that's the end of the newscast. And so it's a very interesting thing if you've never seen state-run media. And that doesn't exist anymore. After Al-Jezeera Arabic launched, Al Arabiya launched, our competitor, and the game has completely changed. People not only question authority in that part of the world, they feel like it's their passion and their right. I want to back up a bit. What people may not realize about Arabs is in the quiet of their home, even all those years they were on state television, these debates were going on in their homes, I think, very privately. Now they're on television. Now everybody's involved. And now everybody's connected. You know, I think the one thing it's done is, you know, people in Libya may not have had a sense that people in Egypt were unhappy with their government. What this did, what Al-Jezeera did, was show that and show the problems in each specific country and shed light on it. And in a lot of ways, for the first time, these leaders and, you know, their party officials were started to be held to account. And I think that's a lot of what we've seen come to fruition is, you know, we're not the story, but we've helped create an environment, I think, where people feel more empowered to talk about the issues in their lives, what is wrong, and what they want to see done. You know, and I'm proud to have been a part of that, even with the English channel. But yeah, I mean, Al-Jezeera Arabic has definitely changed the landscape of the Middle East, and I think the way we're seeing this, and I've been reading a lot recently about how, because this has been happening in North Africa, a lot of Africa is very inspired by what's going on, and they face some of the same challenges that the Arab world has faced. And, you know, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we see some of these movements, these populist movements pop up, and, you know, and people demand better government throughout the continent. So, yeah. I don't know, I hope that answers your question.
So what do you think it will take to extend Al-Jezeera's penetration in the U.S.?
Oh, in the U.S. Yeah, we are currently only on very limited distributions. I'm sure most of you know. I don't know if everybody here gets RT, Russia Today, but I was shocked to find it in my hotel here. So I was shocked to find Russia Today, but still no Al-Jezeera English. Our web viewership, half of our web viewership comes from America. We know this. Like, you know, if you go to aljazeeraenglish.net, half of the people who are clicking on there come from America. So we kind of see, we're being watched in this country, but we're being watched online. And we kind of see the future of our viewership at this point. Well, I'll speak to the web. We kind of see the future of our viewership as the younger generation who doesn't watch television, per se, in the same way that my generation did, but gets their news online at their demand, when they want it and how they want it. They go to the news sources they want, they watch what they want, they choose what they want to know about. You know, they go to their trusted sources. And so For us, that's a huge audience that we're already reaching. As far as traditional television penetration, our signal is free in this country. Any local cable provider could take it and air it for free. The argument that they've given us in the past has been that Americans are not interested in international news, that they already have BBC World Service and CNNI, and they don't watch those as it is, so what makes you think they'd want another option? We obviously disagree with that, especially in these times of change. I will tell you, this week we have a meeting with Comcast. The funny thing is we have this campaign called I Want AJE, where you can go and log on and demand from your local cable provider that they include AJE in the lineup. We got 38,000 emails to us out of that campaign. And we told Comcast this. We said, we've got these 38,000 emails. And they're like, well, okay, get them to us. And we're like, okay, we want to send them to you. And they're like, no, print them out. Print them out? Yes, print them out. So on Friday, before I came here, literally there were people up on the 11th floor of our building printing out 38,000 emails, boxing them up to take over to Comcast. I'm going to cross my fingers. I don't hold out a lot of hope, but you can contact your local cable provider. I have cards about the I Want My AJE campaign, and you put in your zip code, and then you demand from your local provider how to get it. But I think there's a need for it. I think people do want to watch it.
The last time I get Arabic Al-Jezeera, and the last time I checked online, you can't get Arabic streaming. Is that still true? Arabic streaming Al-Jezeera?
On the web?
Yes. Like the actual visuals, not just the Arabic story, but like
Yeah.
if you click on Arabic English,
Yeah.
you can watch live.
Yeah.
Now, I know that there have been a lot of, corporate, legal. I have Arabic Jazeera from the Dish Network,
Mhm.
and a few years ago, various forces
Yeah.
in Washington tried to shut that down so that Dish was going to cancel it.
Yeah.
And there's actually a campaign, I think, from
Yeah.
the ADC.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Dish continues to carry it, but I was just wondering, has that changed? Can you get live streaming Arabic?
I don't know about the Arabic. I thought you could.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I don't think you can. And
I thought you could.
I want to know who's blocking that.
No,
Yeah.
you can get it.
You can
Yes.
on the screen.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
No, I thought you could. I don't know. I confess I don't speak enough Arabic to
Yeah, for a
follow.
while, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm glad to hear that.
You can actually, I was just responding to that. You can get also there's apps for cell phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get it. I'm not into apps,
Yeah.
but that's good to know as long as it's on the computer.
Yeah, I actually get Al-Jezeera English on the iPad. That's how I watch it most of the time when I'm not in the office. It's on my iPad. Or you can get it on a Roku player. I have one of those at home, if you know what a Roku is. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
How do you decide where to post correspondence? Because you talked about 60 locations, and I wasn't quite sure whether that was for Al-Jezeera Arabic or for both Arabic and English. And in connection with that, why was there not a correspondent inside Libya?
Yeah. Well, we have, for the English channel alone, just the English channel, not our Arabic sister channel, we have 65 to 70 bureaus. We have 4 broadcast centers, which are like sort of a big mothership, only we have 4 of them. And then it would be like the equivalent of Atlanta to CNN. That's what a broadcast center is. And then we have 65 to 70 bureaus, and we're in the process of establishing a lot more in North America. For us, it's simply news value. The reason nobody's in Libya is because they wouldn't let us in. We've been banned. We get banned from Arab countries quite frequently, both the Arabic, the English, the whole Al-Jezeera family. Yeah, we weren't in Tunisia before it happened because we were banned. It goes back and forth. We frequently get in trouble in Jordan, depending on the situation and what's going on. But yeah, we get kicked in and we get kicked out. But in terms of setting priorities, like for the Americas, it's just basically proximity and when you have a bureau, like how easy it is like if we're going to have a story in Latin America, where's the best place to put somebody so if something else happens, we can get them there quickly, that kind of thing, and also connectivity, so it's usually in the capital of the country kind of thing.
Can I just quickly, where does funding come from? Because I think that originally the idea of the Emir of Qatar was that Arabic Jazeera would be funded for a short period, a few, 5 years. So who's funding what now?
Yeah, I think that might have been the original plan, but what they've determined with the news operations, I'm only speaking about the news operations for both Arabic and the English, is that we'll continue to remain state funded because of the independence it gives us. We're not beholden to any commercial interests. Basically what happened is I think they watched the way that other news outlets in the world had become beholden to commercial interests. I mean, I'll just say it plainly, and how it impacted their coverage and what they could and could not do and what they could and could not say, and how I think news has become entertainment in a lot of marketplaces, how it's become more infotainment than news. And they didn't want to see that happen with this product, and so they decided that we'll just pretty much stay funded in the news operations. Now we also have sports and other things which are doing quite fine on their own. Everybody wants to watch sports, so those do just fine.
And you have a magazine. Is that just part of what you do, the Al-Jezeera magazine? I just put it in my iPhone just to see what I would get, and I came up with the Al-Jezeera magazine. Does that sort of just summarize what the news is?
Is it spelled? I'm not sure that's ours.
I don't know. I was trying to copy it from up there.
Oh, it could be, and we are. One of the things I will tell you is that we are a very large family. I'll just tell you that.
Al-Jazeera.com.
Oh, .com is not us.
Al-Jazeera.com is that you?
No, it's a gentleman who was very smart, and he took that, and he's been running a newspaper under the Al-Jazeera.com for a long time, and we've gone back and forth trying to get it from him, and it just he runs his own. It's like it's an online newspaper. Yeah, Al-Jazeera.net is us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's a real shame and something we've struggled with for years. So, sorry. Thank you.
You mentioned the CNN coverage on what's happening in Egypt, and you also touched a little about the different angle the television take from. So, can you tell us that what's the main difference for English language journalists who work with CNN and Al-Jazeera?
The main difference between how we would in CNN?
Yeah, what's the main difference for English language journalists who work for different
I've never worked at CNN, so I couldn't speak too much to how they approach a story. I can only tell you from what I've seen on of their coverage, and I think it's partially because obviously they're trying to attract, at least CNN is broadcast in America. I'm not speaking just about CNN right now, but they're trying to, in a lot of ways, draw the American viewers in, and I think to do that, they try to personalize the story. And whether that be about American students in Cairo, because that's obviously of concern to people here in America. They want to know about American citizens who are caught up in this. So whether that's talking to students who are in Cairo who are American and telling the story through their eyes, or if it's Anderson Cooper getting beat up and telling that story, it kind of personalizes the story. There's a lot of personalization of the story, I think, that happens in American mainstream media. We tend to, I don't think you would find us, trying to find an American in Cairo and trying to tell the story through their eyes. We'll try and find the players on the ground, the activists that are involved, the guys from the Muslim Brotherhood. They were on quite a bit, and you'll see all the different faces and voices, and we want to make sure they all get in there. And I would say that's kind of the difference is, but they're speaking to a different audience. We're speaking to a global audience, I think, to people we think are interested in an international perspective, and we like to give a lot more airtime. Like, our packages are longer. If you watch a CNN newscast and you watch an Al-Jazeera newscast, you're going to find that our packages are longer. There's more depth to them. We give a story more time to flesh out. That's by choice. It may not be flashy. It may not be up to the minute like this, but you're going to we feel like you're going to benefit from hearing more out of that story by giving it the time it deserves, and it's going to be fleshed out more for you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the relationship between the different entities in your sister family, particularly the editorial relationships and the infrastructure of that?
Yeah. Well, if you go to Doha, which is where we're both headquartered, they're literally across the street from each other. Arabic's on this side, English is here, and there's just a driveway that separates them. And I'll tell you that the cantina there has much better food than the English channel. So if you're ever over there, don't waste your time on the English side. Go straight to the Arabic. But other than that, I mean, we share resources when we're in the field, and obviously in a situation like Egypt. But other than that, we have an independent editorial line. We're completely editorial independent. We have a different viewership. You know, our viewers are English speakers and all around the world. You know, here in the Americas and in Europe, they may be first generation, around the world, we sort of like, outside of like English speaking countries, we see our audience as like second generation English speakers. So, you know, we have to be able to reach them and tell the story in a way that appeals to them. So it has to, you know, it has to span all those different interests. Whereas the Arabic channel, they're speaking to an Arabic audience, and they have a similar context across that region. You know, amongst Arabic speakers, they have a similar context, so they can rely on that in their storytelling. We have to speak to a predominantly English-speaking audience, and you know, and we are much more international. I don't know if that helps, but we do have completely separate editorial lines. It's not like there's one editorial meeting and it's like, and then everybody takes their marching orders. We have, you know, we have our own editorial staff, and we are editorially independent of one another.
Can you tell us a little bit about how Al-Jazeera try to get the local viewers throughout the world? I mean, you have satellites, but you know, the satellites, unless you have a satellite dish set up at your backyard, you won't be able to watch your program. Normally, you have a satellite signals, and you have some kind of contract with the local cable company, so that they will allow you to broadcast through the cable. You have any successes, any stories you want to share with us? You know, obstacles you encounter. For example, you know, you try to contact the cable companies in the U.S. and things like that. You want to share with us?
Well, I don't have any of those personal stories because I'm not in the part of our company that sort of goes out and tries to get the carriage. But I can tell you that, I mean, they've been trying diligently since we launched to try and get coverage here in the Americas. We just brokered a deal, I think it's a year ago. That video I showed you of the channel was actually a deal to try and convince Canadian cable carriers to take us. That was actually aimed at Canadian cable carriers. And we just broke through there like a year ago. I can tell you we're meeting with Comcast this week. I don't know how much hope I have in that. And they've been trying for years. It's just, you know, it's tough. We've just got a licensing agreement in India, so we hope to have carriage throughout there soon. I can tell you in Pakistan, though, we're the #1 English channel in Pakistan now. So it just depends. I mean, it's something that we're working on various fronts in all these different places, like diligently, you know, chipping away all over, trying to get greater carriage. But in the meantime, that's how Roku found us. Roku found us on their own. They were like, wow, we just realized we could just pick you guys up, and then they put us on. And now you can watch it live streaming in your home if you have a Roku box, and you don't have to pay anybody for cable for that. It's just a one-time Roku thing. But yeah, we're just chipping away at that. That's it's a long battle.
Why do you think it is that you've been having so much trouble getting American cable companies to sign on?
You know, I mean, I'm not gonna say that, you know, having Don Rumsfeld stand up there for days and days on end berating our channel during the Gulf War didn't sort of, you know, flavor things a bit. But we've been fighting against that, and I do take the cable companies at their word. I mean, you're here at Duke, which is, you know, a very prestigious university where everybody is very tuned in and turned on and aware. But I think if you go out to other parts of the country, for example, if you go to where I grew up, a town of 6,000 people in Texas, most people there they've never even heard of Al-Jezeera, and they don't know, what's going on, and they're not interested until it affects them. Now, if gas does hit $5 a gallon, they may be more interested, and they may want to know why. But it's like if everything in your life is going okay, and you may not be interested in what's going on in the outside world. I think that's just the way people are. If everything is going okay in your world, with your family and your friends, fair enough, you might not be interested in that. So I can't say that I think the cable providers are, being devious on that one. I mean, I do think that there's an issue of interest. But I do think that those times are changing, that Americans are more interested in this.
I just want to pick up on a question that Dr. Cook raised, which is, we talked about the corporate piece, but I've been a fan of Jazeera for a long time, and there have been political struggles, even with the editorial, and now I know more about the Arabic, but even with the independence, the news independence, it does, there have been stories about changes in the governing board, debates around the degree to which an Islamist position, sometimes, the program by Qaradawi, Al-Sharia wal-Haya. So the thing about both channels that I find is they're just incredibly responsive to the different political fields, like in a good way. But just thinking about the events in Bahrain, recently, so now these revolutions they're getting closer to home, and I think a lot of us in the region are worried about, to what degree will the ruling regime of Qatar, where's the line that's going to be drawn? To what degree will the Jazeeras remain an open space in terms of the circulation of information and political debate? Because of course Qatar is not a democracy. It's a decent regime. It's but it's not a democracy. It's another one of these emirate kind of rules. So I'm just hopeful, but I'm not really sure, and neither are a lot of people, where Jazeera will be if the revolt actually spreads in the Arabian Peninsula, which we don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
But I know that it's not as neutral of those kinds of political pressures. The ruling family isn't. So, and I also know Jazeera gets kicked out all the time, including from Egypt, and sort of like its way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just to your point about Bahrain, we're there, and
no, I know.
Yeah. I know. I take your point. We're there in Bahrain. I don't see us shrinking away from anything. I mean, I read the morning news note this morning, and I'm not going to get into all the details, but I mean, I was pretty impressed with where the aggressiveness of our coverage was going for the day, and I don't see anything slowing us down or stopping us. Least of all, the Emir's family. They've had a hands-off approach with the network. They've never butted into anything we've done. There's a former reporter who used to work with us at the UN, at the English channel, Mark Seddon, who wrote a piece for The Guardian about that. Like, he's no longer with us, but saying he never saw any of that influence that people sort of fear. They really take a hands-off approach. It hasn't been an issue yet. Can I say 100% it never will? No, of course not. Nobody could ever say that. But do I have faith in the network, and do I have faith in our editorial line? Yes, I do. I'm perfectly comfortable with it, and I think wherever this spring uprising takes us, Al-Jezeera will be there, and you'll see it in detail. And I'm very proud of our coverage so far. So I'm comfortable with it so far. I feel very strong, very good about where we're headed, and the editorial lines we're taking. We haven't had any interference.
So what kinds of things are you doing to try and take advantage of the sudden explosion of visibility that you've had?
You mean other than printing out 38,000 emails? I know. I know. It seems so. It seems so anticlimactic, doesn't it?
I mean, it was just striking to me, you know, and we talked a little bit about this at lunch yesterday about watching, you know, CNN and MSNBC feeds that say Al-Jazeera across the bottom of them with this amazing footage that was, you know, that was coming down. So all of a sudden, you know, there's been this explosion of visibility to, I don't know that I'd say like the mainstream American public, like, you know, my family in the 6,000 person town is probably not watching either CNN or MSNBC, but it's a huge jump in your profile. So that's kind of like opportunity knocking. So what are you coming up with to?
Well, you know, we have this I Want AJE campaign, and you know, we're using that to try and develop word. I think we are relying a lot on younger people who sort of watch us on the web already, sort of watch us when they want on demand. We're relying on them to maybe get the word out, and you know, they even had our Arabic bureau chief, Abdurrahim Fukara. If any of you watch, he's in charge of the Arabics bureau in Washington, and a lovely man. He was on Jon Stewart the other day, and that was quite fun. I mean, and he's been doing tons of media appearances, and you know, and we're doing tons of interviews and all of that, and so you see our people much more out there trying to get some attention and coverage, and we have gotten all these great articles, but frankly it comes down to community demand. If a community is not demanding it at the very local level from their local cable provider, there's nothing we can do. So that's what we're trying to do, is galvanize local communities. Funny thing is we were picked up in Vermont years ago. They were one of the first people to pick us up in Vermont, and then they had a huge debate about it at City Hall because it was like, oh my gosh, Al-Jezeera, and so we sent Tony Berman, who was in charge of the channel at the time, and he went, and so many people showed up to support us. Like, he really thought he was going to have to sit there and defend the channel, and then the town just poured out, and they were like, no, we've been watching it, we like it, we want to keep it. And so, you know, whoever was leading this effort to get us off the local cable system, it failed, and it was strictly because of the community. It has to come from the community.
I think that I want to follow up on that. That's an excellent question. So I've been hosting Jenny, and she helped me download the app for Al-Jazeera English. My family's in Libya. Don't assume just because Duke University is like, so I have my various sources of information. I didn't know, but now I'm tuned into it every second. I've got it on my phone, I've got it on my iPad, because it's much more up to date, it's much more relevant, it's much more, and so I just think, yeah, it's a good question, because there's probably a market there that they're not being tapped into.
Yeah, I hear you. Our PR, I will say this, our PR department has a limited budget, and God bless them, they do a lot of really good work with like little or no money. And I know everybody thinks that, you know, you're funded by the government, come on, you've got tons of money, but they really are strict. I write budgets for my show, and I have to, you know, account for every penny. It is tough.
So let's take two more questions. Marianne and Michael, you get to ask your question later.
I've already asked.
Just following up on this current discussion, as your audience is really, the audience you're targeting is the international person. I think Nick Spicer was here not too long ago, and he was saying it's the global everyman. But in the United States, a lot of that is the expat community that lives here, or the first generation and second generation immigrant communities. So it may not be the 600 people where my family is in Texas community, but it is some of the larger city centers where there is an international community. Is that, are you trying to make a switch from the international community to get a local American audience? Is this a change in?
No, I don't think we're, you know, I don't think we're ever going to be in small town America the channel of choice. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, people at a local level want their local news. They want to know what's going on around them. They want, you know, when is the school opening? When is it closing down? And why haven't they repaved the road in front of my house? You know, that kind of stuff. And we're never going to be that. But if you want to find global information, international news, I think we're certainly a really good option for Americans in this ever-connected world. I think it's becoming more and more obvious how we are connected to everyone. And I just think from our channel, you get a really good perspective of that, because you're not just hearing the stories, you know, from the global north, you're hearing them from the global south, and you're not hearing them from the global south told to you by somebody who looks like me. You're hearing them from somebody who grew up there and has the context and the, you know, and generations of experience to, you know, sort of put the story into focus for you. So no, I don't think we're going to try and, you know, be the local channel of choice for all Americans or anything like that. But I do think that people locally might become more interested in this. Do I expect them to watch Al Jazeera all the time? No. Do I think times like these they may want to tune in and see why, you know, why is that happening over there? And, you know, and maybe, you know, our channel should be the one that they can be able to rely on. And, you know, when there's a crisis, we did some amazing reporting in Georgia when the Russians came in, like amazing. I felt like we did better than everybody else, and that was a story in Europe. So I think when there's a crisis on the ground or a time of conflict, do I want us to be the channel of choice? Yes. Do I think that, you know, Americans in small communities are going to tune into that every day? No. But when there's something going on and they need the information, I would like us to be that channel of choice. I don't think that means switching what we're doing. I just think it means getting the word out better about what we are doing, so that they're like, oh, I want to know what's going on over there. Oh, I can go here. You know, this is my place of information for that.
So Jenny, I get the last question. So I think a lot of people have asked questions about like how you reach out, and you've talked a lot about the television being the norm. But can you talk a little bit about what you've told me that's secrets?
Yeah.
About your new show? But like I think a lot of people here do will resonate with this new way of reaching out to.
If you guys can bear with me for a few minutes, let me see if I can get one other thing. I want to. This is a. We're going to do something radically different at Al-Jazeera English, and I did want to share this with you guys, but now I'm afraid of my own technology. I'm showing my age. We're going to do something radically different. We're going to launch a new show in May. This has been planned for some time, and it's going to be based on social media. It's not a show about social media. It's going to be social media creating sort of the context for the show. And if I can get this to play, and then I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it, please. Cross my fingers.
After more than 2 decades of rule by
Tunisia's revolution has marked its place in history.
Tunisia is now a country in chaos.
But it didn't happen overnight. And weeks before the world's mainstream media woke up to the story, tweets, photos, and videos began popping up on the internet from Tunisia, warning of trouble to come. A fruit and vegetable seller from Sidi Bouzid had set himself on fire on December 18th, and suddenly, reactions on the Twitterverse were exploding. Following the hashtag Sidi Bouzid, I called up hundreds of photos and videos showing students protesting, police abuses, and sporadic gunfire. As the messages went viral, protests broke out across the world showing solidarity with Tunisia.
Tunisian unrest makes waves in Lausanne.
Demo tomorrow to the Tunisian embassy in London.
A flash mob is planned in Berlin on Saturday.
The beginning of a revolution was unfolding, and the mainstream media was just beginning to catch up.
There are no reporters in Tunisia to tell us what's really happening.
Sooner, mass media has totally failed.
Terrorism equals lots of media coverage. Democratic revolution equals little media coverage.
Tunisia's government began hacking into and deleting Facebook accounts. Protesters called for help from activist groups.
An unprecedented crackdown on social media.
Censorship should get in touch with hacktivists.
We really need a local version of Anonymous in the Arab world.
And soon enough, another hashtag appeared across the network. Anonymous.
Wants to restrict the freedoms of people. So, the Tunisian government has made itself an enemy of Anonymous.
Within a matter of hours, Anonymous launched Operation Tunisia, paralyzing the president's site, several key ministries, and the stock exchange. The group also shared a cyber war survival guide, sharing cables from WikiLeaks documenting Ben Ali's corruption, tips on running from cops, and proxy sites to access Facebook and Twitter. The government quickly countered with a phishing operation, stealing Facebook and email passwords to spy on activists and obliterate online consent. But tweets continued to spread, documenting a society's breakdown.
The internet is reportedly cut off from Sidi Bouzid.
People are creating barricades to protect their neighbors.
Students demonstrating in Libya, 50 miles.
Injured young man shot by police in his bag in Kafsa.
For a full week, I watched the story unfold online, speaking to activists, using Facebook and Twitter as protests turned bloody. And on January 12th, with Ben Ali's regime on the verge of collapse, Time magazine finally found the story. But the social networks had the best coverage. A new power structure had emerged, and protests had spread to other countries, and governments scrambled to buy time.
Algeria steps up grain imports.
Dollar of Jordan's Sachs government.
Plus free food for a year to keep calm.
But the anger had already rooted itself inside Arab minds. Through social networks, Egyptians had began drawing connections in late December.
Egyptians should copy Tunisia revolt.
Toppling their dictator. That will start a chain reaction in the Arab world.
Tunisia solidarity demo on Sunday.
Inspired by Tunisia's success, finally, the fear factor had broken. That saw police back up the Egyptian people's resistance against British occupation. As people organized, they drew upon Tunisia's success, sharing pamphlets on peaceful protesting and self-defense. They made plans to circumvent police barricades, quickly capturing the world's attention. But Mubarak also learned from Tunisia. On January 27, just as President Obama appeared live on YouTube answering questions from the public, Egypt's president took the unprecedented step of shutting down. But he was too late. The World Wide Web was against him. The accounts of police abuse and violence circulated online, including footage that the Associated Press picked up showing what some have called Egypt's Neda moments. A coalition of volunteers, organizations, and activists set up platforms to get the message out.
Egyptians, email me if you want to post info on Twitter.
Break the block on Twitter. Use this proxy.
Numbers for legal aid and requesting lawyers. 010.
Even journalists in Egypt used their cell phones to send tweets to friends who relayed their messages.
Internet's still down in Egypt. We'll continue to tweet.
It's safe. She just doesn't have internet access. So I'm tweeting on her behalf.
To stop any news getting out, the government went after the media. Journalists were detained, and the US government, which had been waffling in its response, turned to Twitter to make their voice heard.
We are concerned by the shutdown of Al-Jezeera in Egypt and the arrest of its correspondents. Egypt must be opened and the reporters released.
30 minutes later, our journalists were released, showing that even governments can use social media to get things done.
Our plan is to launch a new social media show, and as I said, this has been in the works for many months before Tunisia ever happened. If everything goes right, we'll launch this in May, and it'll be a completely new phenomenon, we think, and the way forward. Basically, it's going to be a web community that happens to have a TV show. It's not going to be a TV show with a web community, so it's actually going to be a web community that happens to have a TV show. We're doing this very openly. It's rare that you'll find anybody talk about a show that they're planning to launch and tell you what it's going to be and what it's going to be like or any of that, but we actually want feedback and people to participate and be part of our community. You can find us online at AJE Stream. It's going to be called The Stream, and so it's AJE Stream, and we're on Facebook and Twitter, and we're doing something else that you'll see on Facebook, which is part of my technical difficulty to get today, but it's going to be a very open-ended process. And when I say open-ended, I mean completely, because last Friday we held our first Ustreamed editorial meeting. Basically, we invited a group of beta testers to join us live during our editorial meeting, where we pitched stories, as we would do in any editorial meeting, and then they were tweeting what they liked, didn't like, and encouraging us in different directions. And I have to say that some of what they were giving us was actually taken into account and ended up being part of one of the stories we did that day. Right now we're all in the sort of online virtual piloting phase for this. But it's a very interesting experience, and it's going to be all open. And when I say that the content is going to be driven by social media, what I mean is that what people are talking about online all over the globe, that's what we want to be able to talk about that day. and not just the Justin Biebers. You will never see Justin Bieber on this show, okay? It's not our kind of TV. But what it will be is not only what people in the West are talking about online, but also what people in China are talking about online, or what people in Latin America are talking about online. There's some very interesting stories that circulate individually inside countries that only they know about, or that are only getting texted around via cell phones and things like that. And those are the stories that we want to get into and bring to a global audience. I think many of you may remember the reporter who was just fired in Mexico because she asked the president if he had a drinking problem. I don't know if you know that. It got picked up eventually, but we were seeing that story trend in social media in Mexico, and then all of a sudden in other countries around the globe, long before it ever got picked up in America and in Europe. And so something like that would be something we'd bring out. It's like, as things are happening, what is this strand, and why are so many people all of a sudden replying to it? What is it that interested them in that story? And we'll try and bring it to our audience. The show will also go live via the web like 30 minutes before it goes on television, and allow people to vote up or down the stories they want to talk about, and then we'll take that to air. So it's a pretty ambitious project. The young man's voice you heard narrating that piece is going to be the co-host of the show. His name is Ahmed Shihab Eldin. He's really attractive, but he's a social media guru and very good at what he does. But he'll be the co-host, and we hope to have more to announce about the show in the coming days and weeks. But it's an exciting project, and I know we have to wrap, but I would love to hear some of your feedback. If any of you want to be beta testers for the show, I'd love to include you in any way possible.
So how do we get in touch with you?
I'm just about to send it to you.
Okay.
I was going to say first, please join me in thanking Jennifer Salan for coming down from the because they need her back in DC. The second thing was, I would like you to, well, Kelly, maybe not you, but what email can anyone here send, if they're interested in more information?
So we have an email address for Islamic Studies, which is disc@duke.edu. So you can write that, or you can write me directly, kjj1@duke.edu.
No, I think just...
Or, and feel free to just tweet us at AJEstream, or find us on Facebook at AJEstream, or, you can always email me. I'm just jennifer.salan@aljazeera.net. I'm easy to find.
Produced by Duke University. Online at duke.edu.